Jacob had only walked back a few steps, but he was worried. What if Sophie was lost? He walked, hurriedly, from the path he had just come from and had already begun to panic. However, he breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Sophie sitting on a boulder. He walked slowly towards her and squatted beside her. "She's tired," thought Jacob. "I'm so self-absorbed, I didn't even pay attention to her slow pace. She's been diligently trying to follow me, and I've simply neglected her." He sat there for several minutes and gently asked her, "Will you be able to walk?" "If I had my dragon core, I would have made it down a long time ago and wouldn't be in this state." Jacob finally understood her agony. The dragon core kept her energized, and now, without it, she was an ordinary mortal. While Jacob had regained his strength at the temple, Sophie was exhausted. Jacob bit his lower lip with a deep sense of regret. Jacob was also concerned about the growing darkness, and he had to find a solution. "How about," Jacob paused to think, "I carry you on my back?" "No, it's fine. I'll be okay in a bit," said Sophie. She and Jacob took a break for 10 minutes when Sophie began walking again. She walked a bit slow at first and then gained a good speed. Further on their way down, Sophie had picked up the pace, and Jacob was following by her side, trying to guard her against any potential dangers. They once again held hands as they trekked downwards along the peaceful trail. Still, as fast as they were proceeding, the sky had inevitably turned dark. Now that the last beam of light was fleeting away, and they were still 2 hours away from the foot of the mountain, Sophie had become genuinely anxious. "Is it this side or that side?" Jacob held up the map and asked. The closer they were to the halfway point, the more diversions they encountered, leaving them confused. "It is definitely this side." Sophie pointed to the left. "Okay, then it is definitely the other side." Jacob directly went towards the right. After Sophie had given the wrong direction 3 times in a row, Jacob had not put his faith in her sense of direction, and believed that he had to go against her gut feeling to get to their destination. Sophie was flabbergasted, but she did not trust her sense of direction either. In the end, she could only follow Jacob. Strangely enough, every time Jacob had gone against Sophie's suggestion and went the other way, it turned out to be the correct way down the mountain. There were no signs of anyone else the entire way down, and it was dead silent except for the voice of the critters. Consequently, the sounds of footsteps made by Jacob and Sophie were becoming more distinct as they echoed in the dark. As the sun had set, the gorgeous vistas that enchanted them had now become grim and gruesome. Being by themselves in the dense foliage and the loneliness of the mountain was making them feel eerie. Sophie was terrified by now. As a result, her speed had decreased and she was not walking briskly anymore. Slowly, she continued walking by Jacob's side. Jacob read her mind. He held her hand even tighter to make her feel safe. Sophie glanced at his direction and felt glad that he was with her. As they continued to tread along slowly, it kept getting darker, and soon it was 7 in the evening. They were 2 hours away from the hotel going by their slow pace. Moreover, except the area near the Dragon Temple, which had cell towers, their cell phones had no signals anywhere else on the mountain. For them, there was nowhere to turn for help. Hence, Jacob and Sophie could only brace themselves and carry on. The path down the mountain was full of twists and turns. Sometimes they pointed upwards, and other times downwards. At times, the two had become confused whether they were climbing up the mountain or descending. Yet, overall, they felt that they were getting close to the foot of the mountain. "Hey, we're not going to starve to death here, are we?" Sophie couldn't help but ask. "If there is really nothing left to eat, then I'll eat you first," Jacob said to her. "You—" Wrinkling her nose, Sophie glared at Jacob while her cheeks puffed with anger. At least she wasn't scared anymore. Time was ticking away. It was already 8 o'clock at night. However, the foot of the mountains still seemed far away. Even the chirping of birds nestling in for the night seemed creepy to them. Sophie had no one to rely on but Jacob. She stayed close to him and held his hand even more tightly. Jacob was also unfamiliar with the mountain. As he did not bring a flashlight, he could only turn on his cell phone and make use of the weak light from it to light up the path just below their feet. He prayed not to miss a step and to end up rolling down the mountain with Sophie. On their way down, they found some peculiar insects that were emitting a golden light. However, these were not fireflies, as they tend to be lumpily attached to mountain cliffs. Sophie had an intense fear of insects. She cowered right next to Jacob and clutched onto his hand firmly. Regret had filled her heart. She regretted climbing to the mountaintop with Jacob, as it had resulted in them being stuck in the middle of a mountain at night and could not make their way back down. "Hey, don't worry. We'll be there soon," Jacob consoled her. "And, Soph, how am I supposed to walk if you're grabbing onto me so tightly?" Jacob turned and asked her. Sophie's starry eyes looked beautiful, even in pitch dark. I'm not scared. I'm only feeling a little cold." Sophie's body language didn't match her lie as she clung to Jacob. Taking her soft palm tightly in his own, Jacob had strengthened his will to make it down the mountain and pressed on. After walking in the darkness for over an hour, they finally caught a glimpse of the light from somewhere close to the foot of the mountain. It was a street light, and soon enough, civilization seemed to appear before their eyes. It seemed nothing short of magic. The brilliantly lit hotel also appeared before their eyes. "We're almost there," Jacob encouraged Sophie to walk the last mile home. His cell phone was about to die, and the light by Sophie's cell phone was too weak to be helpful. If they did not get down now, they would be stuck on the mountain or bruise themselves reaching down. Sophie also let out a sigh of relief and accelerated her walking speed. At last, after about 15 more minutes, they had made it to the entrance of the mountain. As she had been extremely anxious on her way down, Sophie's palm was now fully covered in sweat. They slowly let go of each other's hands and approached the rest of the path, walking beside each other. Jacob's stomach was now growling loudly. They had finished all the snacks in the backpack on their way down. He promptly walked towards the hotel. Sophie followed behind him, looking torn because of her mixed feelings. Truthfully, she knew that she had become very dependent on Jacob on their way down. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't be able to make this trip on her own. At the same time, she did not want to admit to herself that she could only do this with his help. She believed that if she had run into any real danger, her parents would surely come to her rescue. Jacob was lost in his own set of thoughts. What concerned him the most right now was that he had to share a room with her father. He thought it might be awkward. As they entered the hotel, they returned to their rooms. Listless and exhausted, Jacob was surprised to find that there was a note in the room. On it, it stated, "Sophie's mother and I are going to visit a friend who lives nearby. We might be back late." At that moment, the doorbell of his room started ringing. He ran over to get the door and found Sophie standing there awkwardly. "Let's go eat," she said, as she bit her lip.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.